Think about it. Every hiring decision is a choice that can make or break a team, a culture, and even an entire company. So how do we make the right choice? Hi, I'm Dr. Mickey, and welcome to Inside the Mind of Hiring. Here we'll uncover the psychology and strategy behind effective hiring. Because the right fit isn't just about skill or experience. It's about understanding people, their motivations, their strengths, and the shadows of their shortcomings. Together, we'll tackle the tough questions. How do we look beyond bias? How do we find the qualities that make people not just qualified hires, but the right hires? This is about identifying leaders who drive success, lift morale, and actualize a company's vision. Inside the Mind of Hiring starts now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this beautiful, amazing ride with Dr. Mickey Fineberg. And today, okay, you're going to notice we're kind of matched up for like a reason. Today, we're talking about you can't change your stripes or DNA, but you can shift your attitudes and behavior. In another way of saying this, there's an alignment that happens, especially in Dr. Mickey's world. And it's the alignment of the candidates, how many, I don't even know how many he can even keep up with, that come through the work that he does and selecting the best, the super top candidate. Alignment, yet not assimilation. Dr. Mickey, let's talk about this. Change your stripes of DNA, but you can shift your attitudes, and sometimes we must.
Great. Well, we talked a couple episodes ago about assessing a candidate for a media company that provides data insights for businesses to protect people and assets and enhance sales and manage costs. It's a very successful company. And we were looking to hire their or select an SVP or Senior Vice President, Business Services. And the purpose of the role is to inspire consensus among senior managers on the best marketing, sales, and product program, and then driving that program without direct line authority. So, mustering one's influence effectively to get those senior managers who just, consented to the program to do it successfully. Now, the last candidate that I assessed, I did not recommend. His background was too much business support and not enough driving a business. And his personality was also too much business support and not enough driving the business. So the company accepted my recommendation and just recently surfaced a new candidate. So I did burned a lot of brain cells on this analysis. And I want to tell you about him and what I recommended to the company. And so I want to first start with his background. The initial part of his background wasn't exciting me. He spent the first 4 years in regulatory advisory in the oil and gas industry. Again, kind of like behind the scenes consulting, business support, kind of bureaucratic as well. So didn't like the first 4 years, but the next 8 years kind of got interesting, particularly in the 8th year. The first 7 of those 8 years, he spent with two rather large B2B SaaS business insight companies, selling business insight to companies. And he was in a corporate strategy role for the first 7 years and did some M&A, mergers and acquisitions analysis as well in those first 7 years. And even acknowledged to me that the next 7 years of his career after regulatory was more about PowerPoint and analysis and not much about driving a business.
Wow.
So in his 8th year with one of those large SaaS B2B companies, they let him take on a business driving enterprise, and he was very successful at it. So much so that he raised $4.5 million and started his own B2B SaaS insight business for
Gotta love that,
businesses.
Dr. Mickey. Gotta love it.
Yeah. So his last year with that large company apparently inspired him to start something on his own. The problem is that the business actually ran out of gas after 5 years. Um, because he couldn't sustain competitive advantage. He couldn't keep up with competitive advantage, and he couldn't keep up with the investments that he was getting to continue running and developing his company. So he had to opt out of that. But when he did, he had about 20 employees and he got them all jobs very quickly, which says something rather positive about
It's
this fellow.
huge. It's
Yeah.
very huge. I mean, he actually did that, Dr.
He
Mickey?
actually did that. He
Okay,
used his net.
that's
Yeah,
special.
yeah, I thought so. I thought so. And it also told me about, something about his influence and willing to step up for people that were really helping him develop his enterprise and growing his enterprise. So the next 13 months, he spent with another similar company, but more moderate sized company. But his title was Chief Growth Officer. So he had another front end role where he actually knocked out some enterprise business that grew the company. With each one of these companies that he exploded the enterprise business for two clients, and sales went from 100 or a couple 100,000 to well over 3 million with those clients. The problem is he was there, as I said, for 13 months. The owner sold the business. He really liked the owner, but he sold the business to a group of people that he didn't really care for. I guess he knew them from his network, didn't really care for them. So in the last year or so, he's been consulting. He has 3 clients that he acquired, and he's been consulting with them. Still a support role, but he acquired the clients. So I give him credit for that. But I'm more interested in what he did for the last 8 years. I mean, 7 years.
Yeah.
The trend really looked good to me and had a little more muscle than than his background role was. So I really like this trend. So even though he was kind of he was just, for me, he was really doing it. He was really somehow reinventing himself, and I really see him into that process in the last 7 years of his experience. Even I'm not counting the last year or so as a consultant, but
Yeah.
be
That's a
that
big turnaround.
yeah,
I
for
want
him.
people to understand what it takes to make those kinds of mental, emotional, behavioral, and attitudinal adjustments.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So that was a positive for me. So the next thing I looked at with this fellow is a little bit unusual. I call it what's in a name. What's in a name? Um, he was referring to himself either as Bill or Billy interchangeably, which I thought was kind of interesting. His resume said Bill, but on the test that he took for us online, he entered his name as Billy. Okay. Um, and in his emails to myself and my assistant, he was interchangeably calling himself Bill and then Billy. So, when I first met him in our Zoom interview, I said, I referred to him as, I just said, tell me what you like to be called. What do you prefer? He said, well, I said, Bill or Billy. He said, well, either one is fine, but I do prefer Bill. And I said, okay, great. I'll call you Bill. And I was glad to hear that. And this is why. Connotation wise or projective wise, I associate Bill with someone that's taken himself more seriously as a business leader. Billy is either a stand-up comic or somebody that maybe wants to just stay in a background role. He's kind of taken himself less seriously. That he's interchangeably calling himself Bill and Billy is kind of telling me that he still might have a little ambivalence going in terms of who he and what he really wants to be. Interesting. So it might sound like a small issue,
It's
but
not though. It's not. It's not a small issue because first of all, people don't ask that. So what was your reason for asking that? There's a certain level of respect and honor that comes with that, right? I mean, I go through all the time. People that meet me say, "Should I call you Dr. Pat?" And for a while, I wasn't sure.
right,
So that
right,
says a lot. And
right,
then when a listener heard one of the hosts not call me Dr. Pat, they sent an email. And then I'm like, okay, we're just going to do that.
right, right.
But outside of this world, I'm Patty. And so, like Billy. So, how does this factor in to how we make decisions? Because what you talked about here, you talked about somebody extremely respectful, cares of their staff,
Right.
able to reinvent themselves. So do they fit for the job?
Well, I'm thinking to what extent does he really want to reinvent himself? Because
Oh,
he even said he actually wasn't sure, but he had Bill on his resume, and when I asked him, he said both are good, but quote, I do prefer Bill, which was making me think that he's resolving this issue, that he really wants to be a serious business driver and not just a supporter. That's what I'm starting to think. I'm starting to think he's getting in the groove right now, and
yeah.
the last 7 years is telling me that. But I guess I think he's looking at his own persona and his own real needs and his own real style and what he really and his own attitudes. And I think there's still some a little bit of ambivalence and indecisiveness about that. But I still am leaning towards a Bill being Bill and not Billy when it comes to his role in a business. Okay. So after I asked him what his preference and what he likes to be called, I discovered that he was a really nice guy. He was likable, he showed me that he's empathetic, that he's tolerant, and that he can be engaging. Um, and I also discovered that he has high energy, a lot of intellectual curiosity, a lot of intellectual and physical octane, lots of that. And he's really bright, 142 IQ, and equivalently bright across all key thinking areas that I think about, which is practical or tactical reasoning, conceptual or strategic reasoning, and mathematical acumen on his feet. So he was really, really bright in all three categories. So I'm really, I'm looking at this guy and realizing that he really has some tools. Oh God, I'm sorry.
Well, don't worry. Let me
No,
just pick it up while you're adjusting
got it.
there. Because part of the what Mickey and I are talking about, and Stefan, you just take a look at me for now. What we're talking about is how do you make great hiring decisions? This morning, I
I'm
was scheduled
sorry.
to do, it's
My
okay.
apologies to you
That's
and
all
your
right.
listeners.
This
Never
morning, I
mind.
had a call that I was to have, and this morning it was with the gentleman that started his own company. And as I looked at him, an incredible man, Dr. Washington, when I looked at him, I reflected upon my history at Bell Labs and his history in diversity management.
Right,
And see, it's one of these situations where you meet somebody or you go through an interview like this, and it
right,
reminds you of what your journey is and what's important. But if you're not up on what am I going to say in this amazing call with Dr. Washington, meaning I haven't done my homework, then
right.
that's not going to work out. But how does one prepare for a Dr. Mickey? And what should you know about this? Because what we're talking about here is in the world we live in today. I'm just going to tell y'all that are out
Mm,
there that, like you're like all over social media with your pictures. Please be mindful. Please be careful. This
right,
is an open book. And now with AI, you cannot hide, right? You
right,
can't hide. So
right,
even when people post that very awkward table tennis shot that you made that really makes you look like you're from another planet, you have no influence over it. So how do you prepare for the top job in the company. And Mickey, Dr. Mickey, that's what you're talking about
Well,
is,
yeah, you got to understand that in that two, in that 3 or 4 hours that I analyze who you are, I'm looking at everything I possibly can look at, So that's why I brought up the name as a big issue, because it is a big issue to me. It's saying something. So, we talked about job seekers that really have to be on their game and being the best versions of themselves, and really, preparing um, for this kind of experience when the client's evaluating you and their psychologist is evaluating you. It's a double whammy. It's kind of like it's a challenging gangbang in a sense, where
mhm.
where you really have to be on top. You really have to be on your game, and it was really intriguing to me about the way this guy was stacking up to me. Okay, in many ways, in some ways, he was like the previous candidate, but now he's showing me a little bit of a different twist, particularly with his background. But he's still showing me that he's maybe a little bit unsure about what he wants.
Where
Even
did
though,
you pick that up, Dr. Mickey? I want to talk
well,
about that for a minute
it's
because you're the expert. You know how to find these things. Like many people would just be, I don't care if it's cherry ice cream or vanilla ice cream.
right.
Hello. But your job is to find these nuances that are extremely difficult to do when a CEO interviews a person. So how did you come to this place where you're starting to ask yourself, yeah, maybe.
Well, I'm in the process here. I'm explaining the process.
Yeah.
So personally, it made a nice impact on me. So I'm starting to look at the test that he took. Remember, they take 4 tests for me. One of them is DISC. And on the DISC test, it's an interesting profile. I wonder if we
Mm,
can share that profile. The first time he takes it, uh, he shows a predominantly, there's four style points on DISC: dominance, influencing, steadiness, and compliance. So he shows a predominant, bar, for so to speak, on dominance. And that's a positive thing for me to see, because maybe it means he's more directive and autocratic than he should be. I got a softer side during the interview, but uh, he shows me that that's predominant. But then that's his natural style. So then I looked at his adaptive style, and his adaptive style looks like it's like all the same. It's all on the midline. So he on the adaptive part of the style, that's what he's consciously trying to be. It looks like he can't make up his mind. It's like a chameleon type of style profile. Um, so I'm looking at that, and then I look at another test where dominance is substantial and it's satisfactory, for assertiveness and leading a business. But there's another measure that shows that he's way overextended his needs to make a favorable impression and to be polite. So I'm getting a little bit of a miss data on that, inconsistency. And the other 2 tests that I'm using, both of those said that his social boldness and his assertiveness was flat at best. It was like kind of low average. So oh man, what do I do with this guy? He's showing me some spunk in his background, but the testing isn't showing it. So, but it's interesting. The first disc came back with a disclaimer. It may be inaccurate, it may be invalid, with the high dominance. So I asked him to take it again. Dr. Pat. And he did. And looking at his natural style, his dominance was still above the midline, but it was superseded by compliance. And the whole damn report interpretation changed. It's linked to an expert system. And it's saying that he's much more analytical, even a little bit bureaucratic, and it's back to his roots, if you know what I mean. So, but there's some positive data here, and there's some positive trend in his background, his experience. So what do I tell the client? I'm back there feeling ambivalent myself, and I'm burning my brain cells. So I'm asking the question again, can a person really change his stripes or DNA? And I'm saying yes, he can. I'm really betting on this guy. I'm betting on this guy to show the best of what he has and to be able to muster assertiveness when he needs to in order to take charge, take advantage of conflictual situations to get people on board and to really make this happen. I'm recommending him, believe it or not, because I'm not sneezing at the last 7 years of his career when he really did appear to take charge and run something. Okay. And of course, I want the client to check his references. But from a testing standpoint, I think he can parlay the positive aspects of his personality, his high energy, and his high intellect, and his kind of socially engaging style to parlay some assertiveness when he really needs to be that way.
Yeah,
Okay?
but let's talk about why we're doing this and why we're going through it. So first of all, we're in the same situation right now that the housing market is in. There's a lot of demand and there's not a lot of inventory. And these positions now these C-suite, these top positions, you did a show a while ago where you talked about the cost of making a not so good decision,
Oh,
Dr. Mickey.
it's
So
not good.
let's just explain to everybody why we're going through this and why people hire you. Because, and I made a couple of comments that I'm not going to make today, but I still think Carly Fiorina was the best hire
Right,
in the
right,
world of HP.
right,
However, it didn't fit because somebody didn't do what you're doing. You
right.
understand? But
Probably.
there's a cost to not
Oh,
doing this.
right, right. There is a cost, but there's also this fence sitting issue with candidates of this nature. Um, Part of it is, I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at all the data. There's some data that's really positive for what this client wants. And there's some data that's a little bit of a drag on what they want. Okay. And then I'm looking at the data like a scientist, but I'm also applying some intuition into this. And I know how important it is. And part of me was saying, like there's two voices talking to me, Dr. Pat. One is talking in one ear, hey, Mickey, you got to be tough on this guy. You can't let this guy sort of just slide.
Ah,
You got to be tough on him. And
ah.
there's another side to me that's saying, based on his own inspiration. See, reinventing yourself is caused by inspiration or desperation. People quit smoking because they want to live longer and enjoy their family and, just enjoy, and they're doing well at work and they're enjoying their lives. People also quit smoking because they're inspired that way. They also quit smoking because they may have had a heart attack, you know? So, that's a desperation kind of thing. I think this guy is truly positively inspired to run a business.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I'm taking a flyer on him. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking with internal coaching, the people, he's going to report to the founder and the CEO,
Oh boy.
and I think between the two of them, they can keep this guy inspired and on the path that he's been on for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
And I really think that he's got enough gumption, based on what I see in his background and the positive aspects of his personality, where he can really pull this off. Okay. And also fit in with a matrix culture, because you don't want somebody to be too demanding and too obnoxious and too arrogant either.
Oh, matrix
So,
culture is very tricky.
right, right. So a lot of it is influencing without direct authority, but when you have to know when you have to step up. And I'm really betting, I'm
Mhm.
betting that this fellow can do it. Now it's interesting. That the client, who's my direct contact, is the CEO. I talk to the founder from time to time, and he's involved in the hiring team. And when they engage the hiring team with me, I talk to the founder. And the CEO came from an IT background, so he entered my data into Chat GPT, and basically got the same recommendation back that I gave him, and the same report and analysis. And it took ChatGPT maybe 30 minutes to get there from what he fed in. It was my narrative report, which I thought was kind of fascinating. So it cautiously recommended him as well, which is what I did. I cautiously recommended him, and Dr. Pat, I kind of reinvented myself.
Yeah, me too. Two of us.
Okay, right.
We should do that. Our next show should be about that and what that really
Okay.
means.
Yeah, well, let's hold it to the next show.
Yeah, because we brushed by it today, but we didn't explain the depth of what it takes to do that. And you and I are sitting here, OMG, I am not the person I was when I was just knocking it around at Bellcore and Bell Labs, right?
Right.
But look, this is a powerful show for people to hear, whether you're listening to this as a CEO or as a candidate, because you have to understand yourself. And what a great way to do this. Dr. Mickey, thank you so much for today. Now, before we go any further, how do people find out more about you, more about what you're doing, and give you a call to say, I don't even know, Dr. Mickey, what question to ask you?
Right. Well, they can certainly find out by reaching out and contacting me, and they can do that at www.deltaconsultants.com. Delta Consultants, not consulting, consultants.com.
Good one.
You can certainly email me directly at Mickey, Mickey, at deltaconsultants.com. And they can check my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect.
Dr. Mickey Fineberg. And there's a lot of interesting on my website and my LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of success stories. I don't know if this will be, but I certainly hope it'll be a success story, and I believe it will be.
Yeah, from everything you've said, setting aside personalities or what we would love to happen to this candidate, you have gone through the analysis that is required. You have, and I got to tell you, I am not great at that. I now have a new approach to hiring our producers because I didn't ask the right questions. There's some things that I could have done better. And yet at the same time, I don't make the decision alone. I leave detailed questions up to Jessica and Linda. Nobody does it better than Linda when it comes to them. Right. But for what you're sharing today, this is a seriously important conversation for people that want to move ahead in business.
Right. Right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. I hope it's as applicable to job seekers, because it talks a lot about what they're going to, what they have to show and what they're going to face, and the way we as evaluators, both the client and the way I think about things. It's important for job seekers, as it is important for companies that really want to make the best hiring decision as well.
Yes, you've got to understand what you're doing. Look, when we talk next time about our own reinvention, there are some things that each of us, you and I, have. We know we look for certain things. The bottom line is, for me, everything is Zoom now. And I have not hired top producers because of the way they showed up in the interview.
Right.
You don't do an interview with me with your unmade bed in the background. I don't care how good you are.
Yeah.
You better be some kind of Hollywood person if you're going to do that. But even then, what does that tell me? So when we get to reinventing, we'll look at our nasty old selves and who we are today. Dr. Mickey, thank you for everything.
And thank you, Dr. Pat. Enjoyed
you bet.
it.
Stefan, thank you so much for pushing all the right buttons. And to all of you out there, this is an important conversation because the world of hiring is changing every second. And don't you want to be on the upside of that? We'll see you next time.
Take care. You have been listening to Inside the Mind of Hiring with me, Dr. Mickey Fineberg. Tune in the first and third Tuesday at 11 on Transformation Talk Radio to discover the psychology of making successful hiring decisions. In each episode, hiring managers and HR pros will learn how to leverage assessments and other key screening sources and avoid common pitfalls. Job seekers will gain insight into successfully presenting themselves. For more information on assessing people for mission-critical jobs and on career assessment and coaching, visit deltaconsultants.com and my LinkedIn profile. If you'd like to write me personally, it's Mickey, Mickey, @deltaconsultants.com.